Hello, Music Multiverse listeners. Welcome to Beyond Your Radio. Welcome back to Panelists' favorite show tonight. It's albums that changed our perspective, but in that case, is it perspective? Is it perception? Perspective, perception, perspective, perception.
Oh, matter of how you look at things.
Been that baby, right round, right round. So a little work to define this a little bit better because this is an important show. Sure, it can be you never heard or never liked, but then this album came along and suddenly it clicked. Okay, that's okay. I'll take it. It can be uncertain. You were always uncertain of the genre, right? Or you're never drawn to it for some reason, but you found yourself compelled suddenly, right? What about style or delivery of sound? That can be it as well. Maybe you didn't like live albums and suddenly you listen to this live album and wow, wait a minute, right? Uh, sure, you can mature, but you still have to have the sound that suddenly grips or takes you somewhere that you had no intention or willingness to go down before. I found this extremely hard because I found so many albums where I went, wow, that was maybe one of those albums where I wouldn't expect myself to listen to that. And now, but it's I had to pick, and it got difficult. But I wanted to be smart about it. But tonight, our panelists will reveal their favorite albums that changed their perspective or their perception. I'm playing with that all the time. No one can see it. It's all waste.
I
Let's
saw.
introduce the panel before we go too long. All right. So, from her perspective, the only perception is more cowbell. Damn, Deb Armitage Maloney. He's the cult of perceptionality. Jeff Young. All right. He's still trying to find his perspective of perception. He lost it outside a strip club in Ottawa. Alex Kaluzny.
Oh yeah, it was Ottawa.
Yeah,
I thought I thought it was more Montreal and Gatineau.
Oh,
but
no.
God, I don't want
Everybody
to
this
know.
evening?
Stop.
how do I remember more of that night than you? And you weren't even there.
Hey. There's video.
I hope not.
All right.
Me
so,
too.
Without
I knew that was coming.
further banter, cleverness, ridiculum, you got 5 albums that you'd like to share with us. So let's start with Alex.
Ridiculum. I like that word, and I think I'm going to start incorporating that into my vocabulary from now on.
Yes.
Sounds like a
It's a
prescription.
good one.
Yes.
Sounds like it's got side effects that are similar to that of floor. My first one I'd like to talk about is the perception that changed in me of the metal genre. The album being Finding Beauty in Negative Spaces by Seether.
Okay.
That changed the metal genre for me because it gave the perception to me that it was no longer just about how hard you could sing, if that makes sense. I used to, when I was younger in getting into music, put so much into vocals, and took as I got older to put more into the instrumental parts of it. And I just remember with this band, this was the album that kind of kicked it off for me to get into them. And then on top of that, explore the genre a little bit more, especially from seeing unique standpoints of this where, for it being a 3-piece band, and that's going to allude to something else, one of my later on perceptions. But I think for me, this really helped me gauge that line between rock and metal. And this band kind of helped me set that standard as far as a bare minimum of where I could separate which one I wanted to go towards. And I remember it was the first album, like I said, that got me into this band. It helped me go back in their catalog, helped me go forward, and it kind of helped set the bar for a lot of things in my listening. So
What year was that album?
that was 2007.
Okay. We could have reached over there.
So I could have said an earlier album of theirs, but this was truly the first one in the catalog for that.
It's
for
that
me.
idea of I want rock, I want metal. Why can't I have both?
You're right though. Like there's such a line between what is rock and what is metal, and this kind of blends that midpoint for me. Is do you get more on the heavier side of Seether, or do you get more on the riffy side that still has that metal sound voice to it? Like it kind of has that, like I said, that line in the sand that you get to start to pick which side you want to venture down, within either genre. So.
Just don't fight the Seether till they're foaming at the mouth. Okay. No? Okay. Just me and my own mind. Somebody will sub-reference me eventually. Jeff Young.
Probably that man.
No particular reason I'm picking this as my last, other than I've talked about this album a couple of other times. So, and that, that's somewhat lame. So I'm just going to do it again. But I'm picking Queensryche Operation Mindcrime from 1988 because prior to that, I had heard them with especially they had some success with Rage for Order, but those first two albums, or especially Rage for Order, they had some really good tracks on there. But those particular albums were really more stereotypical metal, where they really focused a lot on Jeff Tate's voice, his ability to hit high notes, maybe longer than he really even needed to in some cases, but he showed the range in all those in those two albums. But when it came to Mindcrime, it was like all of a sudden, okay, I knew they were a metal band. They were, whatever, it was in my wheelhouse. Wasn't ever going to go buy anything from them. Chances are my brother had it anyway. But anyway, but when Mindcrime came out, it was like completely different from what they did before, with all the things they did well put in its place. And Mindcrime being a concept and rock opera album, having a whole story, it was all of a sudden went from just your typical metal band to a band that can actually write a complicated story. It was like, I don't know, like it was like it's kind of like considered their masterpiece. But it's got the complex storyline, and it's got, for them and for me at the time being younger, like it was new structures and arrangements, and it just always, it looked like it just took like brains and effort and will. I think they took 2 years to make the album, but
Wow.
it's just so well done. You just can't help but appreciate it.
Yeah.
And they really made them see them as a real force in the music industry, as before I only just thought of them as just another band.
It made them progressive, really, right? It gave it a whole nother dimension. All right. Damn.
Well, this show might make me seem like I don't know, the first couple picks and my reasons for it might seem like I'm racist, but I'm not. I'm a white, middle-aged, middle-class, suburban country girl. So, so let's just get that clear right now.
Yeah, okay.
So,
Yeah, okay.
You wear it well.
You wear it well.
I wear it well, yeah, with my plaid shirt. Okay, so this album,
That's the difference right there. Saying plaid versus well, it is plaid. It's not flannel though, right? It's not flannel.
it's not flannel. It's not flannel. That's what Mark's
You can
got
edit that
on.
out later.
Not
Mine
all,
is a
not all
smooth-
plaid is flannel.
That's
And not
right.
all flannel is plaid.
It
That's
mostly
right.
is.
That's like a dolphin and a porpoise. So
What?
I never really, that's a whole other discussion. Talk amongst yourselves.
Yourselves.
So
I need to find
it
a
was
new
never,
porpoise.
it was never entertained by rap. It obviously didn't resonate with me, and I never thought that it would resonate with me. I'm thinking, what could they possibly say to me that I'm going to have any kind of connection to? It wasn't that it was off-putting as far as language. I don't have a problem with that if it's used constructively. But this album came out, it's actually a soundtrack. And it made me have an appreciation for the genre that then did lead me down a rabbit hole in years to come and listen to other artists and stuff and just show how much talent it takes to create this kind of music. Um, and that's Eminem 8 Mile. Like I said, I never thought that that kind of music and the artists that were producing it would have anything in common with me. I'm like, I didn't grow up in a trailer park, or I didn't grow up on the mean streets. I didn't, but he kind of gave more of a sense of the emotion behind the words and the real life story of where he came from, and it was more of a little short story for me, and I paid attention. I liked the movie, I liked the album, and then luckily it opened my eyes because I ended up with teenagers that liked those kinds of bands and artists. So that's my number 5.
Good pick. Good pick.
Can definitely get behind that.
All right, see if I can do this. Unchain my heart.
Do you need
Joe
us to call
Cocker.
Sue? Is there a seizure there?
Unchain My Heart. This album taught me about the cover song, the importance of the cover song, the importance of a person who could deliver songs that were not written by them ever. Right? Not only on this album does he have Tuatha Agee, he's got Phoebe Snow, but he's doing the great John Lennon's Isolation, and it's probably, I don't think anybody's covered Isolation, to be honest with you, but him. Just totally different, but in his style. He's got a song, The Unchain My Heart was written by Bobby Sharp. This is yes, Barbara Streisand came before him. She doesn't write her own stuff either, but she was more show tune, more movie driven, right? And Joe, he was just let me do what I want to do, and I'll do it in that voice, and I'll have a seizure and fall off the stage. And but he had wild hair. For the whole thing was, it was, yeah. So that got me, obviously Joe Cocker albums all the time. He covered Prince. He's done all these kind of people, but other artists, Celine Dion, Weird Al Yankovic, who's parodying people, and of course the people doing cover songs within their albums, and that's what they do, one or two. So my number 5, Joe Cocker's Unchain My Heart. I think it was 87, maybe somewhere around there.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I think
I just remember seeing him on Saturday Night Live and going, "What's happening to this man?" And nobody's helping him.
Yeah. They were afraid to get near him. They get knocked unconscious. Clear. Clear. Back to you, Alex. Number 4.
Wow, Deb just made me call a mid-show audible. So I don't feel like we give the rap genre enough love on the show sometimes. We get into our more instrumental type sounds, our rocks, our folks, our sometimes country, much to Mark's behest. So I was going to originally allude to my appreciation of the non-traditional band. That was initially where I was going to go with this. And it was going to be the Black Keys, a 2-person band, first time hearing layering. Kind of was starting to lead into it with Seether. We're going to scrap that right out the window.
Okay.
We're going to go with the album that turned me on to a full rap album. We're going to go with Ludacris's Red Light District.
Oh, there you go. That's a good one. Yeah.
The cartooniness of some of those music videos, but the delivery, I thought there was actually a weird amount of good storytelling at the very end of that album. And I don't mean that in a serious tone, but in at least there was a direction and there was a fun purpose behind a couple of the tracks in it. And it was probably the first rap album that I ever owned. Actually, might be the only that I ever owned on a CD. So that album was kind of my gateway into appreciating the genre and always kind of striving for listening to things that kind of stayed on that path. There was one track that I mentioned the storytelling aspect, and it's just a fun track, but Pimpin' All Over the World was a fun one. Just kind of going through the different locations and had a little story for each within it. And it was just something that was light and fun, and it went with it. So Get Back, number one spot. Like those tracks were always a part of something I, even before games, would listen to and stuff like that. So, yeah, that kind of kicked off my appreciation for a full rap album, and really hard to find for me, a full one that I like. So,
Mhm.
I think the first rap album or cassette tape in this case that I purchased was, I think it was either Run DMC or maybe Grandmaster Flash, but it's probably Run DMC.
Yeah,
well,
I
and I
would
think,
think.
Yeah.
and I think what was interesting for me that I compare it to is so many people pick a Biggie, a Tupac, a Jay-Z, and
Mhm.
it's very New York versus California. And I find it interesting that my first foray into liking it was Atlanta, Georgia. And
Well,
coming out of
there
that,
is like if you had something, that would be the third, probably.
yeah, no, for sure. But I would say the majority of
You'd have
people who
said
are,
Indiana, I'd have went, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
what, you've never heard tracks from Des Moines, Iowa? No, I would say it's just I feel like
Idaho?
so many people are on the coasts for that.
Yes, it's a
And I believe it's very much a New York,
Mhm.
California thing. You could argue Detroit is a number 4 in there if we're
Maybe.
making Atlanta the 3.
Well, the one guy made it Detroit, that's for sure.
Yeah.
No, but I also think like you add in, well, who he influenced, like Big Sean getting in there too as well, and there's a few others. But like, I think for me that Southern rap hip hop scene, that Atlanta set was, it's interesting that that's my first foray and not
Mhm.
like a New York City or California sound. So
Yep.
Nice.
Mr. Young, we'll move to you.
I'm gonna pick an album from '98, fourth studio album from the Cardigans, Gran Turismo. So before Gran Turismo, I really had only lightly known about them. Like there was that light poppy Love Fool song from First Band on the Moon, the previous album, and it was featured. I probably heard it because it was in Romeo and Juliet,
Yes.
the musical song with DiCaprio and Claire Danes, John Leguizamo. But you know, and this album compared to that, it has moments. It's a little more moody. At moments, it's a little more dark, but it still has, you know, some of the upbeat melodies. But I saw this more as an alternative rock album, whereas before I just assumed they were just more of a pop type band, basic band. So that changed my mind about who they were like, and then I've liked them ever since.
I don't
Still
know
around,
them.
right?
Do I know them? I don't know if they're still around. I don't know who they are. I'd have to listen to a song.
Cardigans?
They're Swedish, but they sound American when you sing. But I
Yeah,
bet if you listen to a best of on YouTube, you'd recognize a bunch of their songs. But
Okay.
Gran Turismo is a great album.
Yeah.
I'll have to.
Damn.
Oh, it's my turn. Okay, well, here comes my second album that might make me seem like a middle-aged white suburban woman that I am.
Stacy's my, oh no, not, we're not going that way.
This band has had like 26 albums. They're amazing. The guitarist is a legend. It was never my kind of music though, because it's very Latin and more urban Latin type stuff. And obviously, where I came from, we didn't have urban Latin people and all that. So it really caught my attention. It's from 1999. I think the biggest kudos to this band was to put Rob Thomas on their album to sing Smooth. And this is Santana's Supernatural,
I had a
1999.
weird feeling that's where you were going as soon as I heard the description.
That song in it of itself really made me want to keep listening to the whole album. That made me appreciate the whole album. And then it led me to appreciate Santana as a band that I never did before. I mean, I knew he's a great musician. There was no denying that, but just wasn't anything that I was paying attention to. He's a genius. And the artwork, I wish that some of these bands you make me give a rating on their artwork. This was just so cool, and it's so, Latino, and it's got, little gods, and it's just so colorful, and it's just what South America and Central America is all about, right? So I think if you have never listened to this, you should, because you're watching this show, and I can't imagine you'd watch the show if you don't know this album. So, and then we get to do Matchbox 20, don't we?
Yep.
In
Yep.
March. So,
Yep. Next month.
all right. So that's my number 4.
All right. All right. So I am going to go to a band that started off in 1967.
Woo.
I'm going to mention the band, and most people are going to go, I have no idea who this is, but this is how it goes.
Aerosmith.
Now, rock.
The band.
No. This is Budgie.
Budgie?
Budgie.
Turn the album. It's glaring.
Okay.
No, I can't see.
Other way. Yeah. No, right hand. There you go. Better.
Okay,
Right-
that's better.
Okay.
Right hand toward you. Yeah.
This is a box set, and it has 3 CDs from 1973 through 75 from MCA Records. Now, this is where I started, but this is not where the band started. They started in 71 with their debut. Now, here's the interesting part. So I listen to other shows. I don't create from a vacuum, right? I don't pretend to know anything and everything and all things. But to my kids,
Yes,
I do.
you do.
So they're talking about the new wave of heavy metal. You know, British heavy metal comes in, right? This band is Welsh.
Oh.
Okay. You wouldn't know it technically by the singing and all that. But this is basically, might be, arguably, the first heavy metal band. Before.
Really?
Yeah, it's them and Sabbath in that idea and argument. This is
Okay.
there's a song called Crash Course in Brain Surgery. Has anyone on the panel heard that song before?
Yes.
I don't think. Really?
By
And
Metallica.
who does
They-
it?
Metallica covered it on an EP called Garage Day.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Who covered
Okay.
They
it?
did a great job.
Yeah.
covered it?
Metallica.
Yep. So
Metallica.
this is
I didn't hear what he
people
said.
know.
It was-
And Dave Mustaine of Megadeth, who Jeff knows personally. No, he cited this band as one of those coveted things that you didn't know about, that you go after, you look for, and you
Interesting.
find, and these guys might have been responsible. They are a
Cool.
catalog worth exploring. This is from 1967 to 1988. They had albums, and recently there's another return. So I don't have everything. I'm working my way. I will warn you, these are not cheap singles or CDs wide. I got this. This
Oh.
was a deal because it came with the 3, but they're shrunken, right? They're those little case. This is, you get
Mhm.
the CD, right? And that's predominantly boom, that you got your little digipack, right?
Mhm.
So but I implore you, if you're a metal lover, you probably should know. But it's great stuff, and I didn't know about it, and I thank those that I watch. I will not mention them by name because people already know who they are probably, but and they don't pay me to
Cool.
mention them. So
And Alex, you have birds in your basement, and that's a budgie is a bird.
Yeah.
That's a scary looking bird on there.
I'd like to
and
invite him
never
over.
turn and
I let
never
it share a
turn
cage.
tell your bird never to turn your back on a friend. Back to you, Alex, before you kill the bird.
Well, I'll invite that one
Don't kill
over.
the
Deb's
bird.
cat. They can all have a royal humble in the cage.
Stop it.
No, it just sounds like a party. Speaking of party,
Oh,
an album
I know who you're
cover
gonna say.
that for a live band, or sorry, not live band, obviously. It's a live band. It's a live
They're
album.
alive.
Hope they're not dead, because
Could be AI.
Well, I say party because if you ever see the album cover for this live album, it looks like a giant party, and it's probably the reason I listened to it a shit ton as a kid. It changed my perception of live music. I say this because I also probably watched half of that album live at Thursday at the Square. It was Moxie Frubus's Live Noise album,
yeah,
which has been touted as a phenomenal live album. Surprisingly, I did not know it ever got reviews.
top 100 albums of all time, live albums of all time.
Really?
Mhm.
And I wouldn't be
Wow.
surprised because it was a fantastic album for as much as it drew from multiple venue appearances. It wasn't a straight through of one performance. And to be honest with you, my affinity for watching live music probably comes from listening to that album at some point, which on a past episode, I talked about American Motorsports and Bill Murray. And I just
Yep.
watched their show from live in Atlanta last night, um, just for fun. So that probably is rooted somewhere in my listening of this and the appreciation for the side skit track. Um, you had to have 2 or 3 tracks, and then you'd have literally they're talking to the audience and interaction,
Yeah.
and then another 2, 3, 4 songs, and then an audience bit, and then a so there's a right and a wrong way I think to put it together, and that one just kind of seemed to nail it for me, and it was my first listen of something in that wheelhouse. So yeah, Moxie Früvous's Live Noise album.
Cool.
Well, Jeff Young.
I'm gonna pick actually another album from 1998, third album from Marilyn Manson, Mechanical Animals.
Ah.
So before that was Antichrist Superstar, which that album is one of his probably his most popular, and that album is really good, and I really liked it. It has a lot of harsh vocals on it, which is completely different than Mechanical Animals because it went from more of a harsh vocals with metal to more of a shift to, like, I guess the way I saw it described was, I mean, it included more like glam and electronic elements. Um, the vocals are a little more melodic in a lot of the tracks, and not as just, less screaming, less harshness, less angst, so to speak. Um, but I just thought, from one album that I thought was really good to an album that was so different, but equally good and maybe even better. I just was really impressed that he had those two sides to him, and I just thought before that, before like Antichrist Superstar, I just really never paid attention to him because you see the album covers and all the makeup and all the, you think it's just a shtick, but it's really more of a style, and I don't know, but I just thought the difference from one album of Mechanical Animals coming from Antichrist Superstar was so different, but yet both so good. I had a really new appreciation for what Manson was as an artist, as opposed to just somebody with makeup and a good band.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, screaming Mimi.
Definitely.
That growl, not growl. What would you call it?
It's like a fry.
Vocal fry.
Deb.
Oh, okay. I've already talked about this album probably 3 times on this show, but it didn't just give me an appreciation for one thing. It was more than one thing. It opened me up to acoustic recordings. It opened me up to what the root influences are of a lot of the great bands I was already listening to, and not really knowing, understanding, or appreciating where they came from. So this is Eric Clapton's Unplugged, 1992. I mean, to me, in the past, it was you play your piano acoustically, right? Play your guitar acoustically, but you don't play a whole album acoustically with your guitar and blah, blah, blah. And then, it made me just listen harder to the songs he was playing and where did that come from? Where does he draw that from? And obviously, all my bands that I loved are very deeply rooted in blues and just that down in the trenches kind of making your music and writing with emotion and writing about real things that have happened to you. So I really, once that MTV Unplugged was on and I then listened to it over and over and over again. It made me go back and listen to things like Robert Johnson and those guys. And it's still one of my favorites of all time. And even after didn't we do live albums and we were allowed to use the Unplugged, right? I went back and I listened to it again because I hadn't listened to it in a while. So
Yeah, I think
that's
we
my
did
number
live
3.
albums Unplugged as well. Yeah. So
Yep.
my number 3 while I was exposed to singles from this band, they were never, I don't know, it wasn't something I expected to get into. One of my friends was heavily into it at the time. A lot of that stuff, like the Dead Milkmen, um, and the other bands like that, the Dead Kennedys, I think at that time too were around. But this band came out with this particular album, and I think it was probably 85, maybe somewhere around there.
Okay.
I kind of had this black wing hold of synth rock music, but an intentionally progressive delivery. And they had the guy who had a sadomasochistic obsessiveness and a cool use of metaphor. And this is Depeche Mode's music for the masses. I mean, this is a record that I was the first one I ever bought of theirs. And then that kind of led me back. And I still don't think, while I love Some Great Reward and pieces of it, this album from start to finish is you go, and it's Never Let Me Down Again, The Things You Said, Strange Love, Sacred, Little 15, which, holy crap. Behind the Wheel, I Want You Now, To Heaven to Hold, Nothing. And then my favorite is the instrumental Pimp. It's just wickedly designed. It has this weird synth orchestral arrangement, and then it has a hidden track in it too, which is great because it's I believe they call it the um, instrumental number one, right? Instrumental number one. It's called interlude number one, and it's Mission
Interlude.
Impossible, but it's
Oh,
not Mission Impossible, so to speak.
got it.
But yeah, they that led me to all their stuff. I have never been disappointed by an album of theirs, I don't think. Um, and they have one of the best live albums ever made. That 101. Because you don't think you hear that and it has a droning kind of and you don't think it live it's going to be anything different. But when it came to live, how do you elevate that? Well, they always found a way to elevate it. One of my greatest regrets of all time, not seeing them live. That's for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah, I wanted to go see him, and then this was like probably 8 years ago, and they canceled the show in Tampa because we had a hurricane, and
Oh,
they never
geez.
rescheduled.
Said, screw you, Florida.
Yeah. Teach you to have rain all the time and fast winds.
Wind.
Alex, number 2 for you.
Well, that's why we live where the wind hurts our face up here.
Yes. And we fall in our driveways and break our hips.
Yeah.
I came close to taking down an ACL the other day snow blowing because it's all layered and ice right now. So,
Yeah.
my perception that was changed from this is almost not even an album, but one man. I can name probably 3 albums I attribute to doing this, but I'll pick my favorite of them.
Okay.
We'll go with Soul Circus by Victor Wooten. However, I could also just as easily pick What Did He Say, Yin Yang, Palm Mystery, a couple of my other favorites of his that he had done, but he changed my perception of the instrument of the bass guitar that I genuinely just overlooked a lot in music. If you say the word band, what do you think of? And I alluded to this when I mentioned 3-piece and 2-piece bands earlier. You think bass guitar, lead guitar, vocals, drums. You can envision it. It's the Beatlesy type mindset of seeing them all up there. But I think that this was the first album and really artist that shone a light for me based on just me discovering him first, amongst many of the other greats. Really made me start to pay attention more to what's going on in the background and hearing the sound and that's produced from playing the instrument. And especially with these albums, putting it in the spotlight and allowing the instrument to talk, so to speak, as opposed to vocals are secondary to what he's able to do. And I always joke that on the Soul Circus album cover, he's got 6 or 8 arms or whatever it is. And I'd be damned if that's not how it feels like how he plays. So that talent alone I'm lucky to have seen him play. and actually sat in on a workshop he did at Buff State when I was probably in early high school. Um, my dad was going and asked me if I wanted to go, and just to watch what he could do in a classroom sitting up in front there live was like
That's cool. I like
that.
that. It's a good
That's
story.
that smacked me in the face to watch him play that
Yeah.
close and not
Yeah.
on a stage, no
Right.
one playing a second instrument to go with it, just watching it literally spotlight focus that how he his techniques and how he went about it was incredible. So um we'll say
Yeah,
Soul
that would be
Circus,
an
but
that's
Victor,
impactful. Yeah, I like
yeah,
that.
he
That's a good one.
changed my perception of the instrument entirely. And now in any genre, I can pick it out. Literally, I can point back to that him as an artist, and those albums is what did that for me.
I think in
I
that
like that.
you need to check out Lord Stanley.
Heard of, but I have not
Lord
listened.
Stanley Clark.
I've heard of,
He's
and
not
then
a
obviously,
lord. I just thought it'd be fun to say that.
Because it's the Stanley Cup.
and really what kind of led me not to that path, but what Victor led me to off that was obviously my dad's love of probably one of the more famous bassists, which was Jocko.
Mm-hmm. Jaco Pastor. Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
Love it.
And another name I would have dropped, but I thought you knew that one already.
Yep.
Mr. Young, you're number 2.
Kids Bop, Japan, 1994. No, just kidding.
Yes, I knew it. I knew there was a deep, dark
What
secret.
is happening?
There was a Japanese version? Shit.
No, I'm picking an album from '94, the self-titled Foo Fighters album.
Okay.
Because before this, I just thought of Dave Grohl as the drummer of Nirvana. And 3 months after Kurt Cobain's death, this album comes out. 3 months. And the only reason he said he wrote this was for fun as a cathartic way to deal with Cobain's death. But yet it hits the record stands, and I couldn't believe how good it was.
Mhm.
It's so different. You would think, oh, you thought it was you thought it'd be like Nirvana. It's not.
Right.
I mean, they had some good
Yeah.
singles off it, but it just so different. And he wrote everything, and I just couldn't believe you think you know a drummer, and then this happens.
Exactly.
You think
Yeah,
you know an
think you
auto
know a drummer.
mechanic, and then you're on the side of the road with your hood and
Could be
smoke.
more. Could be more on that coming up. Yeah.
Okay, well, I get these two albums mixed up from the same band, but so it's really more about the band than it is the album, but they're very close together. One was in 76, one was in 77. This kind of music I just thought was very angry, offensive. Don't spit on my car, please, if you're near me in the parking lot kind of band. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Christian rock again, huh? All right.
yeah. So it's the Ramones.
Yes.
And they're yes. So, they're self-titled was in 76 and then Rocket to Russia was in 77. And it's blurred for me is I don't know if it could possibly be because I had a double 8-track that had both of them on there in my car. It could
Yeah.
have very well been because when I looked at the song lists on both these albums, I would have thought one of the songs was on one album but anyway, they even the titles of these songs. I mean, Sheena is a punk rocker. Well, you know what? You can't be scared of somebody named Sheena. So I said, I'll give this a try. Maybe it isn't so angry and horrible. The reason I liked this, prior to this, my exposure was the Sex Pistols or, just angry, the Dead Kennedys, things like that. But this is a mix of punk and the Beach Boys surfer music. It is, Rockaway Beach, and it's still singable. You can sing along. Teenage Lobotomy. I mean, I want to sniff some glue. Okay, like These
Get
are
back to the
great
album,
names
please.
of songs. You
I didn't
can't
think the
help
show
but
was
have
going to go this way, but do we need to have an intervention?
You sniff glue, you know your nostrils close. I don't understand how people did that shit. I don't understand.
Yeah,
Oh,
the
not
fir-
Gorilla Glue? Oh, I'm sorry.
The first time's the last time.
We all
Yeah.
know rubber cement is like the top shelf stuff.
But gave me a whole different view of what punk rock was. Thank God, because there's so much good punk out there that is blended with other genres. And I may have just my entire life been pigeonholed into the idea that I'm gonna hate it and I don't like it, but it is fun. I just heard Blitzkrieg Bop on the radio. They still play all their songs. They're awesome. So everybody love the Ramones for me, please.
Hey, you have
That
to.
could be, that'd be a great band or brand one too, just based on the amount of times you see that block lettering of the Ramones everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everybody at some point in their life wants to be sedated. So to you, Mark.
Oh,
Fair point.
speaking of sedation.
Seduction?
All right,
What?
so yeah, you think a guy's just a drummer. Yeah, he is, but so I don't come in on this, and I'm a prog lover now, but I wasn't a prog lover at the beginning of my music listening experience. No way, no how. And anybody who goes right into prog as a music lover, that's an interesting individual. Button them up and put them in a museum. So you get this this that's all, right? And you're like, what is this? This is it's like a folk rock song in a way. It's just a shame. That's all. It's just okay. All right. Well, I wasn't digging that as much, but when we got to Illegal Alien, I was like, oh wow. Now we're just making fun of shit and having fun with it all and laying on back and whatever, letting it loose. All right. So it's pop. It's pop. But I bought it, and all of a sudden, there's this haunted story of a robber that goes into a house that's haunted in the home by the sea. There's the silver rainbow, which they kind of believed that they had an Adam Ant kind of um idea of how they wanted to make. Who says let's make an album and one of the songs, let's kind of give it that Adam Ant feel. There's an unknown Sunday, Adam Ant. That was probably one of the ants that was killed in A Bug's Life. But and then it's just a job to do. All right. I don't know if you know the song, but every time that was my favorite song on the record. And it had that heavy rock, progressive idea.
That was used in a TV show, wasn't it?
Yes. It was used in a TV show. And actually, that TV show aired, I believe.
Wasn't it called The Insiders?
The Insider. Yeah. Yeah.
It was like the beginning sequence.
Yeah. It was the theme song for it. And I want to say it came on either before Miami Vice at one point in that time frame when they were going on, because they were trying to, but I think it only went 2 seasons. And I've yet to see it on any streaming service. So anyway, just like that and a couple of other shows. But this is Genesis, and I got into Genesis there, which is a strange place because of that's not my favorite Genesis record. That's Trick of the Tail. And Phil Collins hates his drumming on Trick. He thinks the drumming on this album that I'm talking about is better than Trick of the Tail.
Oh, interesting.
But Genesis is an entire rabbit hole about going backwards and forwards. I mean, that Jesus, he knows me thing. That's that Illegal Alien thing coming back again, right? So, but I still, they are the quintessential progressive rock band that was, and they were huge at one point. Invisible Touch and all that. They were big.
Oh yeah.
And they deserve to be in that. They found progressive pop rock. They found their place. That yes, they were a 70s obscure Russian, outcastish kind of thing, and then that they definitely got more famous as time moved on in the 70s, late 70s for some of those people. But when Peter Gabriel left the band, there was like this whole who knows. But I like all their catalog except for one album, and that's the last one, which doesn't feature Phil Collins. And it just didn't. I felt like it was just It didn't fill a gap, didn't end anything, didn't. It was probably a poor choice.
Yeah.
I mean, the songs
one.
are okay, but I just yeah. Anyway, I went too long there. Alex.
Oh, and I thought you said Prague. I was like, what Czech Republic band is he about to pull out of his ass for me?
Czech Republic.
So I'm glad that went the way of Genesis. Uh, but what happens if I give you Our Lady Peace, I
Mhm,
Mother Earth,
mhm.
and Tea Party? Anyone?
If you put all three of them together, the Great Canadian Invasion.
Get the warehouse in Canada, downtown
Well,
Toronto.
you'd get Crash Karma. Supergroup.
Oh, okay.
What happens if I give you Guns N' Roses, Jane's Addiction, and
Velvet Revolver.
and there you go. And Stone
Yep.
Temple Pilots.
Yep.
So I'm gonna go with I've actually almost referenced the year earlier. Believe it was 07. As I do a little fact check here for a hot second, it was 06, 07, and it was December and the February area for the release. Libertad from Velvet Revolver. It was the first supergroup album that I got into, and was part of the reason why when I heard Crash Karma, I dove so hard into it to hear the meshing of styles. But Velvet Revolver, for their two albums, were and Libertad just happened to be first for me, but it was second in the order. Something that made me explore more about, like I said, the clashing styles, the combination of a different sound, again, less about the vocals in music, as I mentioned in my first album of the night, but it was more about, okay, now I know the guitarist is Slash. Or, I go to Crash Karma and I know Jeff Burrows is the drummer. And it makes me start to pick out things that aren't just insert new lead singer here and the band's identity is what I'm hearing in that vocal sound.
Right.
And so that
That's the
album
idea of a
is
supergroup, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ian Thornley auditioned for that role,
Yeah.
but I guess I don't know. I think
You can say-
I think after auditioning, I think they both felt like it didn't fit. But
Well, and you can argue that it probably was the best thing to happen to him when he started making his own solo stuff, because his own solo stuff was phenomenal as well.
sure was.
To my listening as well.
Yeah.
But I think that album was really what forced me into a different listening mindset, where then when them Crooked Vultures came about, even when Dave Grohl did the Sound City stuff, and they started putting Paul McCartney into that with a rock sound, like as such, it promoted so much more, where that's kind of the root origin that made me like listening to these combinations and differences. And I'm always open to hearing about more that have been out there, but those 3 or 4 that I mentioned all kind of stemmed right back down to Velvet Revolver.
Smart. Like it.
Jeff?
So mine's from '82. It's a collection of live songs. So it's a live album, but not just one full show. It's Speak of the Devil from Ozzy Osbourne. It's his third solo album after Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman. So Blizzard of Oz was 80, Diary of a Madman 81. This was 82. And so I was like 10, 11, 9 years old, like when this came out. So I didn't even really know Black Sabbath, but these are only Black Sabbath songs that Ozzy and his solo band played live. That's what the whole album is, just his Black Sabbath work with his new band. And I'm like, well, where are all these songs? They're all new to me, So this is what got me into Black Sabbath. And I was like, my impression of Ozzy changed from I love Ozzy or I like Ozzy, these two albums that he already came out with, to okay, I guess he's already a legend. Like, I didn't realize that. Now so now I got to go listen to all the Black Sabbath albums. But just fun way to discover stuff, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah.
And now look where you are, Jeff.
Right.
Yep. Then and down by the river.
By the way, I was closing out my tabs of albums, and for Crash Karma, Ian Thornley is featured on one of those tracks.
I think I talked about that once. because I feel like I must have looked that up, but
I
that's
didn't
right.
know that. Hmm. Damn. Number
Oh,
one.
it's my turn. Okay, well, I started in 2002. That's my most recent album that changed my perspective. And now I'm all the way back to 1973. But it didn't change my perspective in 73 because I wasn't listening to it in 73. It was probably 1979 or 80 when I started to get into this. Because up till then, my bands that I liked were, and my influences and things that I would gravitate towards, first, obviously, the Beatles, which then, I was more into the softer stuff throughout that. So it was like an Elton John and Billy Joel, but then I got into Nugent and Led Zeppelin, of course.
Of course.
But this album was the foray into me appreciating Yes and Genesis and ELP and King Crimson and those kinds of things. And this is Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. I don't have to tell
Yeah.
anybody anything about this album because if you don't know about it, then you got to start all over, people. Start new is all I got to say. Because wasn't this like on the top? Wasn't it on the top albums? Like, wasn't it like 20 years? It was up there in the top 100 or something.
Well,
It's
in
crazy.
the top 5, I think, of
Yeah,
sales
it was
all
a
the time,
long
every
time.
year. People rediscover new, 10-year-old, the next 10-year-old, the next 10-year-old. It's like the people who, they read 10 Little Indians, right? That's all, they're gonna read Harry
Yeah,
Potter. It's gonna be that kind of thing, right?
it is.
This is
That's what
that.
it
This is
is.
that
And it
album.
changed. Yep,
Mhm.
it changed me because I wouldn't have appreciated a Yes or an ELP. It was that more sonicy, weird. It was a nice segue. It wasn't over the top type, but it was totally different than anything I was ever listening to.
Right.
That's for sure.
Right.
It still holds a place in my heart. And that's another one with a great album cover, people.
Yeah.
Get your artwork going here.
Oh well, progressive rock loves triangles. They love triangles.
The Illuminati.
Oh yes, or a sphere,
They
or an
they they
ellipse.
love triangles.
Oh,
Love.
well,
Ooh,
I'm sure yes.
that's a whole other show.
That's right. That's best love triangle in music. Great pick. Great pick.
If Courtney Love doesn't fall on that list somewhere,
Uh,
like a love octagon.
so Chuck Norris.
Mm.
What?
I noticed cheese always tastes better in triangle shape too.
It does?
Yeah.
No,
Doritos.
processed
Called a
cheese
wedge of
when it's on a
cheese.
tortilla chip.
Yeah, thanks for now making me want to eat Doritos after the show. Wait a minute, I usually do anyway. All right, I will finish this off with an interesting album. I might have touched on it once before. I felt it's still the number one album that perspective is still changing. And
Okay.
because this artist is so complex and so beyond what I know, he's a pianist by trade, but his jazz fusion, his folk appreciation or entanglements, I didn't appreciate or I didn't know. And even classical music, right? So we got classical, we got jazz, we got folk, and then we have gent, DJENT, a style of music that is usually used in the rock and metal progressiveness, right? So some would say that they're kind of like a Meshuggah, and that even the drop D's of the world. So this is Tigran Hamasyan,
Oh,
Mock Root, and this is from 2015, February 17th. That was my experience in this jazz pianist just literally sucking in every possible way you could play a piano. And I've said this before, there are times on this record where I felt like he was going to pass out. and there's just no way you could keep this up. But there's also these lovely transitions that aren't that way. There's even minimalism to it too. And then
Okay.
there's even not American, but folk, right? And
Mhm.
I'll lead you to this. This led me down different rabbit holes of him, but also of Hoshka, who's a multi-instrumentalist minimalist who does soundtracks for music motion pictures. He has another. He
Okay.
won the Oscar a couple years ago for a war movie based on a book. Great something. Oh, shoot, that's terrible.
Great Escape, Lone Survivor. I don't know.
No,
What are you
I
talking
can't. It's terrible. It's terrible.
Okay. All
I can
right. You're
see it, but
terrible.
I can't bring it. But and other artists that and trying to get, but he's done some heavy folk type of classical and jazz combinations that take your ear and you have to absorb. And then that led me to last year's #3 album of the year, and that's Tigran Hamasyan's
I don't
Bird
know.
of a Thousand Voices. Jesus, yeah, Bird of a
Oh,
Thousand Voices.
geez. Well, that was
A
close.
little off right there, but that is a monumental one that you can't go to without going to Mock Root, without maybe checking out prior albums like the Shadow Theater or other ones. But he is a treasure. He's Armenian, and he is forever changing that landscape of familiarity, and which is in jazz fusion, classical, and what they'll call classical folk.
Okay.
All
I'm
right.
good.
Excellent. Well, I thank the panelists for doing this tonight. We love these panelists' favorite show. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another one. I was gonna say what it is, but I might change it now that I had an
Okay.
epiphany.
Okay.
So we'll leave it a surprise. Please hit the like button if it's
Und subscribe, yeah.
subscribe, because perhaps
Thumbs up.
you need to change your perspective or your perception of this channel. All right. Well, anyway, we're on the web at beyondyourradio.com, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, of course, articles, videos, podcasts. Well, we'll see if that comes. All about bands, artists, music news, anything we can get our hands on. Go Beyond Your Radio with us, a real music appreciation channel. We always thank you for watching and tell you happy listening.